Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Can you hear me? From the weather-warm city of Abuja, it is my pleasure to warmly welcome you to today's edition of Money Radio. This is the agribusiness and industries segment of the program, and you are on to Leadership TV. Today, we are discussing a topic that says the need to revive Nigeria's steel industry. In the studio with me to discuss that is Mr. Paul Wadima. Mr. Paul Wadima is an in-house analyst, and I can assure you, you are in good company when he's in the studio. Mr. Paul, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm your host, Case Hammond. Nigerians are used to, whenever we talk about steel industry, steel mill, steel company, the name that readily comes to mind is the Ajaokuta Steel Company. And it's because of the design and this huge capacity. You know, when I think about Ajaokuta Steel Company, what comes to my mind is the picture that has been coming, that we have been seeing on television recently. If you have been following the Russia-Ukraine war, you must have been exposed to the site of that Avostal steel plant, that huge plant. And strangely, the Ajaokuta steel plant is designed and built in that same fashion. That's why probably we hear much about Ajaokuta steel plant or the steel company. But it may surprise many Nigerians that there are actually up to 24 steel companies in Nigeria. Yet, Nigeria is not producing the steel that we need. To name a few of those steel companies we are talking about, we mentioned 24. You have the quantum steel, that is quantum steels, that is real infrastructure in Nigeria. That one is somewhere in Shagamu. You have African Steel Mills, that is somewhere around Ikorodu in Lagos. You have Ajaokuta, of course. You have Alas Will Steel Construction Company, which is around Ibadan Expressway, Ibadan Lagos Expressway, and a host of others. There are actually 24 in all. Yet we are not producing steel. It seems like we only recycle because, of course, when you see the boys who pick um, metals that are thrown away as waste, it is for recycling. It's like the steel plants we have are actually for recycling, but to produce steel, we aren't there yet. Do you agree, Mr. Paul? And if you agree, why are we here?
I will not agree with you that we are not producing steel. If we are not producing steel, why do you have the 24 companies we talked about?
Maybe
The
recycling.
only thing you can say is this: Nigeria is importing the raw materials for producing steel. We have several steel companies in Nigeria. Many of the aluminum windows, aluminum doors you are seeing all over the place. Many of them are produced here in Nigeria by these aluminum companies, steel companies.
You make a very good point there.
There's many of them producing doors, windows, and what have you. So we have them, but they are importing the raw materials for it.
When you say raw materials,
the
are we
raw
talking
materials
about
are the raw material we're talking about is like the pellets
Okay,
that is needed to produce the steel.
okay.
Ordinarily, Ajaokuta Steel Company was set up to use the raw materials in its immediate environment to convert those raw materials to pellets so that steel companies all over the country can be able to be accessing it for the production of steels or whatever of several needs.
Okay.
So that is what is on board. That is the reality. So we are importing about 3.3 million billion dollars
Worth of steel or
steel.
pellets.
Yes, we are importing into the country. You can check the record in 2020, according to the United Nations, Nigeria imported 1.8 billion dollars worth of steel.
That was the COVID-19, the height of COVID-19, the
Yes,
lockdown period.
yes, we're able to import that kind of amount. But when Nigerian steel companies are in their elements or in their full capacity, they import almost 3.3 billion dollars. It's not naira. You can when you convert it to naira, you now know what it means that
Mm.
we are spending, which we could have been able to to use in growing the economy if Ajokuta Steel Company is functioning optimally and producing enough uh, raw materials for the steel companies. But it's not functioning well. Ajokuta and Alaja in Delta State, they
Yes.
are meant to produce these billets that's supposed to be the tail end in the steel production process, so that other steel companies can now harvest it and add value to it to produce various types of steel products that are needed in the market, both for domestic use, for industrial use, and what have you. So that is the situation. We are importing a whole lot of steel, but we could have saved a whole lot of money, especially as foreign reserve, foreign exchange, if us were able to put Ajokuta to work after all these years. So my brother,
The
the
situation.
situation we find ourselves.
You know,
It's pathetic.
you gave out an important statistic there that Nigeria imports steel to the tune of 3.3
$3 billion.
$3.3 billion. You know, Nigerians seem to be fixated when it comes to this issue of foreign exchange, hard currency. We seem to be fixated on the importation also the subsidy of fuel, to be specific, gasoline, diesel, kerosene, and all of those. And that is where we think much of Nigeria's foreign currency or foreign exchange goes into. But from the statistic you just read, it makes it, I mean, it presents a different picture that it's not only steel, I mean, not only fuel that much of the country's money or foreign exchange goes into. We are talking about steel here.
Yes.
Now, when you talk about 3 point,
If yeah, it's not because if you look at most of the steel companies in Nigeria, like the 24 you mentioned, we might even have more than that number.
yeah,
They they are they are using diesel to power their industry or their
yes,
companies
yes,
because of the epileptic nature of power supply
yeah,
in the country. So many of these companies spend huge amount of money
yes, in producing
in
the steel.
producing the steel.
Yeah. Now,
That is
Mr. Paul,
why they are having problem of productivity. The
yeah,
productivity of the Nigerian steel companies is abysmal because of the poor power situation in the country. They spend a whole lot of money buying diesel, which cut into their profit margin drastically. I once had a managing director of a steel company saying that his company in Lagos, they 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 used to have 2,000 workers and they operate a shift. But because of the high cost of diesel, the workforce has been reduced to 200 and there's no more shift. And you can imagine what it means. If you do a simple arithmetic, you will discover that 1,800 of his workforce must have been laid
Laid
off
off. Yeah.
for him to speak like the way he did. And that was because the productivity was very, very low due to poor power supply. So it's part of the thing that need to be addressed in this country. The steady power supply. How do we industrialize Nigeria? How do we industrialize Nigeria without adequate power supply? Is it possible? Has it been done anywhere in the world where a country was able to industrialize without power?
Without
That is,
steel too.
yeah, yeah. I'm getting to that because power is you must have power first before you be able to power the state. Do we have any example anywhere in the world? That is the question that should bother our leaders
Now,
because they are the ones that are supposed to drive some of the processes that will lead to the maximization of the comparative advantage that Nigeria enjoys in the steel
sponsorship, and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Welcome back from that break. You're still on to Money Radio, and in the studio with me is Mr. Paul Wadima. I'm your host, Case Hammer. We're still discussing the issue, the need to revive Nigeria's steel industry, and we were talking about a number of steel companies in the country and that they are producing. But much of what they are producing is from raw materials that are imported. And we talked about $3.3 billion worth of pellets or billets that are being imported into the country. Now, I was trying to raise a point, Mr. Paul, and I would like your take on it. You know, whenever we talk about the issue of foreign exchange, hard currency that the country is spending out there to import fuel, of course, our minds are fixated on fuel. Even me, I didn't know before now when you read that statistic that Nigeria imports as much as $3.3 billion worth of pellets. Now, to put things into perspective, $3.3 billion worth of pellets is just like about half of what Nigeria uses to import fuel every year. That is petrol, gasoline every year. That's about half of it. So the corporate here is not only fuel, but we are talking about our money going into pellets.
Exactly.
Yes, and that much going into the importation of steel, which is available here. Steel companies are here. The only thing left is that company which is supposed to be producing the pellets, and we're talking about Ajaokuta Steel. What stops this government? At the time I heard that there was only 1% of the work left to be done at the Ajaokuta Steel plant. Of course, that has stalled right now with the war between Russia and Ukraine because that plant was being built. I was trying to draw an analogy between the Ajaokuta steel plant and the Avostal steel plant, which is currently being destroyed by Russia in the city of Mariupol. That is going on right now, even as we speak. But I was trying to draw an analogy. That is a huge complex. And if the federal government have reached 99% of the construction work of that plant, and there's only 1, 2, maybe even 3% of the work that is left, what stops this federal government from producing that, which is just that link, just to join that link? And of course, you begin to have production of pellets. You begin to supply the other 23 steel companies, and jobs will be created. The economy will be revived. The economy will be diversified. What stops this federal government from doing it?
Well, the building of Jakarta Steel was through international agreements between the Nigerian government, the Russian government, and several other governments. We had, like everything in Nigeria, our leaders had not been very sincere when negotiating on behalf of the country. Because if they were, a Jakarta Steel Company, if you remember, you have been studying about it right from, we have been studying about Ajaokuta Steel, right from whether primary or secondary school. And yet the complex has not been completed, and our leaders feel comfortable about it. Obasanjo hammered on Ajaokuta Steel and left. Buhari did the same thing. Jonathan did the same thing. At the end of the day, Ajokuta Steel is like something that is outside the reach of Nigerian leaders to be able to touch and complete. It's unfortunate. The political will to do it is not there. That's basically the way I look at it. Because if we have had a president who was single-minded that Ajokuta must be productive, it must not remain merely a potential, we would have gone far. So I think the summary of it is just lack of political will. Nigeria is a country where people like things to be easy for them. We always like the easy way out. Because if Ajokuta still is something that we can just bring Europeans, they manage it, start it, and they start running. Like the uh, oil company, international multinational oil companies in Niger Delta, and they just come here, bring out the crude oil, and we just export it, help us export it and stuff. It would have been up and running. You understand? They are not ready to do the work that needed to be done. So the political will is not there. Then there is also another dimension. Perhaps there's an international conspiracy against Nigeria so that Nigeria will not become a state power. Because if you look at the history of industrialization, you find out that steel plays pivotal role in any country that has ever industrialized. So one of the best way that you can stop an emerging giant of Africa from becoming a world power industrially is to sabotage it, and you can easily always get uh, easy recruitment from the leadership of the country and make them not to regard it as an important asset, and it will be wasting away. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
So I look at it also as there's perhaps international conspiracy against Nigeria. But that conspiracy, like all every conspiracy I keep saying, I'm one of those who are actually, I don't believe in conspiracy theory that much, because in as much as I've read how Europe underdeveloped Africa, I don't totally buy into that concept, because the same Europe that underdeveloped Africa, underdeveloped Thailand, underdeveloped Malaysia, underdeveloped Singapore, and several other Asian tigers, including Hong Kong, that have moved on to become world economic powers.
Yeah.
So I don't like to buy into that concept of conspiracy theory. It was Europe that put us the way we are. Because the same Europeans were in India. Today, India is a world major industrial power. So the problem is on ourselves.
Yeah, and if there is
so the problem is right here in Nigeria. We have not been able to have a kind of leadership that will drive our economy and point out those growth pole economic sectors that can move this country forward and concentrate on them. One of them is that this Ajokuta steel, Alaja steel, things that we can put our money and we can know that the results will be fantastic for the development of the country, because our industrialization as a nation depends a lot in being a steel power. No country has ever become a world industrial power without having the steel components to back it up.
What you're saying, it may be possible, but if there is an international conspiracy, then there is a local betrayal
Of
Yeah,
course.
and
Of course. Of course.
but if there is any local sabotage, then I think it is the height of mm, the height of betrayal of national interest. Because, Mr. Paul, let's put a little into perspective. Let's take away the idea of exporting, assuming we want to use all of what we produce here for um, for local production or local construction. See the amount of steel that we actually need in this country. Look at the number of houses that are being built, the number of high-rise buildings that are being built. All of those buildings require steel,
Solid steel.
solid steel. Look at the number of roads that are being built, the number of railways that are being built, bridges. All of those require steel. All of those things are being imported in the country that could have been used here. When we talk about the naira devaluation, these are all the contributing factors to naira devaluation. So if there are people who are sitting on the progress of the Ajaokuta steel and the diversification of this economy, then I stand here and I stand to be corrected, but I think such people are actually the unpatriotic of this country, and in fact, I call them Judases. They are Judases. They are betrayers, and they don't work in the interests of the nation. And, such a thing is very bad. Do you have any other word to say?
I think what I have to say is we are now in the election season. We need to listen to our presidential aspirants. They should be able to talk about issues like this Ajaokuta State, issue of industrialization and development of the country. We don't want to be hearing all these noises about jamboree and
I will
all
build
that.
I will build golden
Yes,
roads. I will
because
make
these
sure.
are issues that need to be addressed. How they can be able to make sure from the first year of their presidency, Ajaokuta Steel Company, Alaja will be operating at 100% capacity
Yes.
and be able to help this country to
And
industrialize and become one of the most industrialized countries in the world.
yes, and let's highlight that phrase: hit the ground running. Know what you want to achieve, not just to think to say that God has called you. No, know what we don't want anybody that is called by God. Know what you want to achieve, put it on your, make it a part of your roadmap, and hit the ground running from May 30th, 2023.
So,
Hit the ground running. You want to know all that you want to achieve. And that Ajaokuta State Plan should be one of those. With that, I want to draw the curtain onto this edition of Money Radio. You have been on to the agribusiness and industry segment of the program. I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Paul Wadima, for being here.
thank you for having me.
Yes. So we say thank you also to our producers, but our biggest thanks go to you who follow us loyally on this program. Until we meet tomorrow for another edition of Money Radio, from the Abuja studio, I'm Case Hammond, and I'm saying to you, have a great day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.